Planning on smoking some smokehouse burgers and some beef ribs tomorrow. It's a little wet because it's been sitting out in the rain, but there's a good pile of hickory chopped up right out here. This video I'm going to do a little bit differently, and it's because of an article I found, a post I found online in a community that I've been working on and with for years now, the Steam It/Hive community. And there's a user on there called Builder of Castles. We've had a back and forth relationship, just interactions for years. And a recent article that they put out really kind of seemed like the type of thing I'd like to read, but then also interject some of my commentary to. Not that you have to in certain situations, but I said, hey, do you mind if I use this as a base for a video? And they said, yeah, that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to pull it up here on my phone, and I'll read it to you, and I'll put on the screen, the words that I'm reading, and then kind of add my thoughts. So you'll be able to differentiate between what they wrote and what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is just going to come across. What I say that they said will also be backed up by text down here. So by their own words, this is only a brief overview, but the title is, in the near future, you will need to grow your own food in your own greenhouse or starve. And of course, that's a great attention-grabbing title, and here's what they had to say about it. In the near future, you will grow your own food in your own greenhouse or starve. These are not prophetic words. They are just the outcome of many forces already in play. I'll add here, if you don't see the writing on the wall, you gotta pay more attention. I met some people who recently moved out from California, and I'm like, wow, you guys had to wait for like almost all the writing on the wall before you got the message, There are forces in play. I 100% agree. And as I said, it's not prophetic. It's just, can you see what's happening? And can you see where this path leads? Because if you do, then prepare yourself ahead of time. Just the inevitable outcome of many factors pushing in that direction. Absolutely. So they start off by saying we are at the beginning of an ice age. Growing seasons are getting shorter. I don't agree with the long Earth history of the world, the stuff you would find at a natural history museum, what predominates the public education system and the science textbooks. It's not science. It's not observable, testable, and repeatable. The natural history museums rule out the supernatural. Therefore, how do we explain this while rejecting God, rejecting the supernatural? I would be what you'd consider a young Earth creationist, believing that not all that many thousands of years ago, God actually made this. So the whole ice age thing, I do believe that there would have been an ice age probably after the flood of Noah's day. And there's a lot of events, if you think about the fountains of the great deep breaking up, a lot of heat, a lot of water, a lot of reflection of the sun, a lot of things going on that, yeah, I believe in ice age. But as far as like the long timeline one, I'm not sure which one they're pointing to here. The modern view is often the longer, millions and billions of years type history. America didn't grow enough grain last year to cover the usage. And I would add that, a lot of the grain that we're growing is compromised. A lot of it chemicals, right? Isn't there Roundup claims right now with mesothelioma or some sort of cancer because of Roundup? A lot of things are genetically modified. A lot of that stuff is getting worse and worse. A lot of patented seeds, a lot of stuff that's sterile that won't even grow. If you plant it, I'd rather not eat things that are sterile. I'd rather not have my children eat things that are sterile. And, of course, what do you want to feed an animal to fatten them up? Grain, right? Boy, we sure do eat a lot of grain, don't we? Why do people go over the hill at 40? Well, if you sit on the couch eating your potato chips, drinking your Diet Coke, watching, whatever's on television, whatever program they have, yeah, your decline is going to come pretty quick in life, isn't it? America's farmland is mined out. All the topsoil has washed out to sea. A while ago, I talked to one of my neighbors. I said, hey, because here it's like rock and clay. Some of my pastures is just a pile of rocks. I mean, that's what I have. And I mentioned to one of my neighbors, I said, hey, I found a bunch of free topsoil. You know where it is? And they said, where? I said, down at the lake. It's all hills and valleys here with a dry and thirsty land that does not absorb, because it's rock and clay, so much washes out. There's entire rivers that come all over the place when we have like a flash floods, when it's a torrential downpour, everything turns into a river. Sometimes I can't even get out from the area in which I live because I can't cross that in any vehicle that we have. I don't know if there's a vehicle that could cross it. Everyone would die. We've tried to make it home before, realized we couldn't get across, and had to spend the night at people's houses on the other side of that low water bridge because it was just a raging thing. But America's topsoil. People, if you back up in history, they didn't even used to talk much about the type of soil people had because things were covered predominantly in some nice soil. So it didn't really matter what type of soil you were growing in. It was nutrient rich, it was dense, it was good to grow in. And then, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Plowman's Folly, but till the earth grind it all up, wash away, not using winter cover crops. A lot of things have wound up getting washed out to sea. The delta is just all this stuff that's just been washed away and started piling up down there in the Gulf of Mexico and other things. It's unfortunate because we cannot grow in the traditional methods that we've been using forever and continually deplete the soil and have that continue to go the way that we've been doing it. I want to continue to build up soil here. I would like my garden area to be deeper every year, become more of a hill every year because I'm adding more organic material to it through compost, composted wood mulch, rabbit manure, other things, that I keep having raised beds that are deeper every year and that have a whole lot of interaction at the soil and microbial level so that things are continuing to be broken down and processed and turned into useful things for the plants. A lot of stuff, it needs to be water soluble for a plant to suck it up. So a lot of that process that the microorganisms do really helps. The point of what they're saying here, though, is we can't even grow very well on what we have available. Our farmland gets less and less farmable each year, and we keep having to dump more and more stuff into it. What type of stuff? Well, chemical fertilizer components are mostly from Russia, which is being embargoed. To support the system the way that it is, with things being so depleted, we have to continue to add to it, but we're outsourcing so much of our additives, like the chemical fertilizer components from Russia, that, we're not going to do that, We got to embargo Russia. We got to our own hurt sometimes, put somebody at a distance. I understand that concept, but if you're too set in your ways, if you've set up too much of an unfortunate system ahead of time, it's not going to work out well. They continue, rain patterns have shifted, and I haven't looked into that one myself, but you can see a lot of places, they're just not getting a lot of rain, right? There are states that are almost always constantly on fire. That's poor forest management as well. But if it was wet, there'd be a whole lot less of that. And they're getting to the point, they're going to be what? Trying to pump the Mississippi River out west. I got an upcoming video I plan on doing. I want to go to a couple of the local springs in my general area. It's amazing because there's so many places I know where amazing water is just bubbling out of the ground. And I know a lot of people who aren't hooked up to water. So they may do some rain catchment, but they head to the springs and they get this amazing stuff, which I've said in previous videos is way better than the stuff you get from the water treatment plant, and from the water supply in the city, where they're doing a lot of stuff to it just to kind of put it on the table. And a lot of stuff, I don't trust what they're doing to it or putting in it. Also look into acidic and basic, look into different things. I would much rather have mineral dense, I would much rather have the spring water from a local spring than, a bottled water or stuff out of the tap, especially in big cities. Food processing plants are burning down. You guys ever hear anything about that? It's amazing. I don't know how many planes crash into these things. I don't know how many mysterious fires start, and happening, I think, with chickens now too. Oh man, it's amazing. We're in such a system. People are so dependent. They're so consumer oriented. You go have a trade, get an incredible amount of debt, produce nothing yourself, and just be a consumer. And then whatever they send down the pipeline is what you have to have. And if nothing comes down the pipeline, then sorry. I don't want to live that life. That's part of why we're out here homesteading, doing our own stuff. Part of why we're preparing our garden, doing all this stuff, using what we have on the property. I can cut down a tree and I can let another one grow. This happens all the time out here. I'm not just a tree murderer, it's important. There's a lot of stuff on this forest floor I've got to clean up, just to keep it healthier out here too, and less of a fire hazard. But it's renewable. It goes on and on and on. But a consumer is not renewable. Yeah, that consumer can die and maybe have 1.3 children or whatever they have these days, and give themselves a replacement for the system. But the consumer mentality is not sustainable. It's not renewable. Life out here, it can be if you do it right. Food distribution avenues are being broken. We have two options with this. Is the supply chain really just happening to be disrupted? Or are people actually trying to disrupt it or use that as an excuse or all these other things? Either way, you look some places you can't get the supplies you need. Either way, remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020? There's all sorts of stuff. Or the baby formula shortage, Man, hopefully a lot more people breastfed who could in those days. That's the way that we like to do it. My wife just had our 8th child, and I'll tell you what, even after breastfeeding 7 children, there were some difficulties and struggles and trials as we started with this 8th one. But we got to that point, so it breastfeeds to this day. She's healthy, she's doing well. Hopefully more people got back to that with the shortage, but you got to be careful. Just like that, the house of cards can just come tumbling down, and that foundation of sand upon which it's built can be just eroded away, washed away to the sea with all of our farmland topsoil too. It doesn't take much these days. The FDA and similar organizations are destroying livestock and birds. I might try to actually interview somebody. I know of somebody who had all of their chickens killed. Officials came in, said you don't have an option, this is what's happening. I would actually like to hear it from their mouth, and possibly make a video, maybe record, maybe do some editing with their voice or other things. I'm not sure how anonymous or protected they would want to be, but I just learned about that first-hand information in my actual life just this last weekend. But it's amazing, all the livestock and birds. And I'll go in a future video about some other things, but if you look at it right, eggs are bad, chickens are bad, fishing is bad, deer are bad, everything is bad, wood stoves are bad. It's amazing how much of what people could do themselves is just bad, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't take it in your own hands and provide for yourself. We've got, an app for that. We've got a venue for that. We've got a business that wants to make money off of that, so we can't let you do that yourself. You can rent from us. You can buy from us. We can put you on a payment plan. We'll hook you up. But we can't just have you doing it yourself. Then you don't have to go take the time out of your life to earn the money to pay taxes on, to get the money to pay taxes on, to spend the money to pay taxes on, to actually own the thing so then you can pay property tax. You understand what I'm saying? It says here, even without the mother, WEFers, the World Economic Forum, you will eat the bugs. Making things worse in the background, we are headed for a time when our current system will no longer feed us all. You think? Do you think? Look at what they're trying to do. Eventually bugs will fart. And then they'll be bad, and then you won't be able to eat the bugs either, Continues, our farmland is almost spent. Already added some commentary on that. And even that, look at the way that modern people farm. My dad grew up on a dairy farm in central Wisconsin. As I started transitioning to more of this lifestyle, he says, yeah, I grew up on a farm, but I realized there had to be a better way to make money. We're actually just doing like the farming we're doing, the homesteading we're doing, for the purpose of needing less money. Not necessarily to make money, but to need less money. If we're growing our own food, that's beneficial. We need less money, less trips to the grocery store. Then if we're saving our own seeds, we're buying less seeds. In fact, we save so many sometimes that we're selling them and bringing an income from it. But just a way to make money is not what this lifestyle is for me. But think about the way that a farmer farms. So often you have to get such a big setup, so much acreage you couldn't possibly usually afford it yourself, so you go into debt for that. Then you need such big amounts of seed, sometimes you have to go into debt for that. I think Pa from Little House on the Prairie, until he went into debt to try to grow a bumper crop of, I forget if it was wheat or whatever it was, and that failed. Until that, he didn't need to go to the city and get a job. He did after that. But then they get all this big equipment, all this big storage stuff, all these other things that it's unaffordable for them. And then usually, like even with the chicken houses or other things, by the time you're almost out of debt, to kind of keep your contract or keep your whatever, they've got to do some updates or some bigger, better things to keep you in debt. So in the second the rug's pulled out, you don't own any of it anyway. It was never yours. I don't like that system of farming. I really don't appreciate it. And the delayed planting and harsh rains will prevent us from growing enough. So food's harder to grow. You can get late rains. You can get, the weather messing things up. It doesn't take much to have a year's supply be extremely diminished, below average. Through permaculture practices, we can regenerate our soils. I believe that's part of what we're working on here. It was amazing when we first moved down here how many people would complain about the soil, but then every year they'd rake up all their leaves and burn them. Like, compost them, make some leaf mold, let them break down. Don't just burn them and then complain about, one of the opportunities you had, you wasted. Set yourself up for success. But this is a labor of love from a small grower and not a factory farming outfit. Juxtaposition, somebody with their family using their own food scraps, to feed their chickens, to compost, using their sheep manure, making their own stuff, working the soil with their hands, interacting with it, keeping an idea about it. I got a video that you guys should check out for this planting season about liquid fertilizers, rabbit manure tea, comfrey tea, fish emulsion, stinging nettle tea. I mean, this stuff is amazing. You can do it yourself and start building things up. But it's not always just on the massive factory level, the factory farm. It's a whole different scenario and experience to have a more permaculture, more regenerative soil building practice of gardening than just till it all up and soak it with Roundup and then we'll throw in some liquid fertilizer. I don't want to play that game. With modern technological conveniences, we can grow our own food in about 10 hours a week. And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much effort to grow a garden. It's amazing. I've got a video about what I would recommend if you're just getting started gardening. I wish more people would watch it. I think it'll really help, but it doesn't take that much effort. And if you start bringing in the food, think about how much time and effort and energy you would have had to go get it a different way. They continue with we can build food forests that pretty much take care of themselves, providing many layers of food. Our actual main gardening area here on our property is eventually just going to be a perennial garden. There's an amount of stuff going across the ground level, like thyme, strawberries, other things. Then we have things up a level from there at the bush level that are starting to grow in, currants, gooseberries, bush cherries, other stuff. And then you have your trees above there, fruit trees, nut trees, and then we'll have some vines mixed in. We got some cold hardy kiwis and other things going on. But eventually, because it's a distance from our house, that if we age in place, we got to plan for our future, eventually have a more annual crop garden bed closer to our house that we can tend as we get older, but then let the other stuff sit there and just kind of run itself. Let the yarrow and the comfrey and the other things come up every year that are perennials. Let other things reseed themselves. Our red stem Malabar spinach, I actually just sent some midwives home with some of the seeds from last year because they're sitting there. Sent them home with some because it just reseeds itself every year. I planted it once like 5 or 6 years ago. I haven't had to plant it since. I want to have more of that stuff in that location, and even our pastures here where our sheep and our cow go, I want to have a level of fruit trees in there. Keep them pruned up a bit so nobody's nibbling on them. Let that get an upper canopy. They can go around and mow for it. They can fertilize for it. It'll give them shade, and then it'll be providing food for us. And just have this set up where it needs to go as we work our way through the woods here. We're leaving the persimmons. We're leaving the black haw. We're leaving things that make nuts and food and fruit for us, and we're kind of phasing out some of the other stuff. We're selectively cutting it. We're not just clear cutting everything. There's a lot of use and value here that we like to be able to tap into. You can even grow many of your own vegetables like lettuce indoors under grow lights. And yes, indoor under grow lights. I know some people who've had some success in the windows. You can use what you have. If you're in the city, try a balcony. Put a tomato plant out there. One tomato plant can really do a lot if you prune it and train it properly. It's amazing what can happen. Many people are blazing the trail for us to follow. Videos on every aspect can be found, and it's really satisfying to know that you grew the food on your plate. Learning experientially is great. Having a clue ahead of time is even better. These days there's a lot of good information out there on the internet, a lot of good videos, there's a lot of good books, often for free at the library. There's stuff we can do, and there is a great appreciation and satisfaction even with my children. If I open a can of green beans from the store, they used to be like 55-cent can of green beans, and heat that up and plop it down on the plate in front of them, there's a real disconnect for them. But if they've especially saved the seeds from them, planted the seeds from them, watered and weeded and tended to them, they like to pick the bugs off of plants and throw them in a little pond, let the fish eat them, go out there and harvest, and then help preserve. I mean, they have such a connection and appreciation for the food that by the time it winds up on the table in front of them, they're like, awesome, success, here we go. It's a whole different feeling than a consumer gets. And I like that more hands-on, relatable, an actual, relationship with that food that both I can get and also my children. It is a very satisfying. They continue. Probably the most important reason why you will grow your own food is not because of a lack of food at the grocery store, but because when you grow your own food, you know where the food came from and how it was raised. They're putting like nanotechnology and mRNA and all sorts of stuff in the food now, right? You know that, right? If you don't, research it. You should know that. They're messing with and corrupting all sorts of stuff. I'd rather select the best of a type of plant in my garden, let that one go over mature and go to seed, and then save the seed from that and let it grow again and keep doing it. Keep getting a better and better and better plant for our growing conditions, our growing zone, our daylight, our soil type, our rainfall, that type of stuff. But when you go in there on the genetic level and start messing with it and making chimeras and mixing all sorts of different things together, that's a level I'd rather not do it on. That's one of the reasons I really like to grow my own food. Plus, everything that they put into the soil and put onto the plants to keep the bugs off, other things. In some countries, they look for the stuff that bugs have nibbled on. Why? Because the other stuff killed everything that came near it, so they don't want to put it in their bodies. Interesting, isn't it? I prefer non-GMO crops for sure. Would you like bread with ground up grasshopper meal? I mean, if you want to, go do it. That's fine. And, even I think a while ago there was a certain burger company in Australia that was putting kangaroo in the beef patties. Put it on the menu. If you want people to have the option to eat it, put it on the menu. Don't sneak it into the food. Would you like chicken nuggets with a crunch cricket coating? Yeah, they want us to just eat the bugs. I don't know what their fascination is with this. I really don't. All I know is I don't trust them, so it can't be good, right? Well, even if you don't, that's what you're going to get. And check this out. And the FDA has already passed code saying that you do not have to put the bug protein in the ingredient list. Why? Well, a portion of any factory-made product will contain a percentage of bugs. Flies that buzz in, a worm or two in the fruit. So things like ketchup are being allowed to have a certain percentage of insects. They just upped this percentage. So it's already allowed. A cockroach can fall off the ceiling, land in the stuff being ground up for a breadcrumb. Okay, it's in there. We don't always catch it. We don't always see it. There could be, bugs, worms in the fruit or other things coming in. A fly could land in. They use some good examples here. And that's going to wind up in there anyway. So there's a percentage of it that's just expected or accepted. And if you just increase that level, now you don't have to put it on the packaging. You see that? There's so much that I really don't like. And they continue with that too. Do you know if your corn is GMO? Well, it doesn't have to be labeled. It doesn't have to be labeled, so you won't know. I'm going to try growing corn this year like never before. I have my reasons. Wink, wink. Do you know if that organic fruit is really organic? Do you have any way of checking? And then what percentage of it has to be organic? There's so many hoops to jump through with some of this stuff and so much stuff they allow. It's kind of all about who's paying off who's lobbying who, which, company or politician is involved, and what level of, personal kickbacks are they getting. It's amazing when you really get into it. And unfortunately, so many people have proven themselves to be incredibly untrustworthy that I can't believe anything they say. Some people are like, oh, you just don't trust so-and-so. I'm like, okay, can you name one thing that they've ever said that was truthful? Because if you can't, then why in the world would I believe them? The food you are getting at the grocery store is already very low in nutrition. This is true. A lot of times when people try to incorporate more wild edibles into their diet, they get sick. And what it is that their body is having trouble being exposed to that much nutrition. That actually happens to some people. There's handfuls of certain things, weeds, I could grab, some of them grow in my garden, but I could eat that and get like 100% of my vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, just like that, by eating it. And so many other things. And yet you go get basically water that was spray painted, or put a wax coat on it at the grocery store, and it looks nice. So we're going to buy that because we just look at the outside. It looks nice. Like some of these ladies dressing themselves up with all the makeup, and then they take it off, and you're like, oh, what was that? That happens. That's how we like our food, too. It's sad. Soon, what you get at the grocery store will be very suspicious. I am glad for some of the stuff that they still put on the labels, because there's a lot of things I'll grab, I'll look at it, it'll go right back. And I'll sit there and be like, I wonder if I should try something. Nope, I shouldn't. I like that when decisions are already made for me. But labeling gets worse and worse and worse. And it's amazing, too, the Food and Drug Administration. Interesting. You guys thought much about why those two go together? Continuing on. Stories will be coming out every week about how X was found in Y. But if you are not already growing your own food, you will have no choice but to eat what you get. There's all sorts of that. Oh, big recall, salmonella on this. Oh, big recall on this, big recall on this. And then sometimes it's not even recalled. They just let you know, oh, that happened. I like having more options. If I take matters into my own hand, I can go to the store and buy things still. Or I can eat the local stuff from, 300 yards that way. So seriously, in the near future, you will grow your own food in your own greenhouse. We don't have a greenhouse yet. Had a friend before We Tree Bonsai gave us a structure. Something like a 20 foot wide, 40 feet long, 60 feet long. I don't know. I've got some of the piping here for it. I was hoping on my last year off of gardening, we took last year off to get that up. I don't have a greenhouse yet, but thankfully, we live in a rather 4 seasons worth of food area. There's an amount of winter wild edibles and stuff we can still get. I like that. We're actually just eating some raisins. It was old grapes that were here. They landed on something. So my son Monster Truck and I were just eating the wild raisins the other day. It's essentially what they were. But a greenhouse ups your capability absolutely crazily. I do appreciate Builder of Castles allowing me to use this as a base for this video. I do appreciate and agree with, the vast majority of what they brought out. That just means they're paying attention. They're thinking about things. They're trying to stay one step ahead of the game. You think about a game like Mousetrap or something where the trap is being built the whole time. That's the system in which we live. The trap is being built the whole time. Avoid taking the bait every opportunity you have. See where things are going to be coming in the future, and then do something about it. Do something about it so you don't get trapped into something you don't want to be trapped into. I hope that makes sense. If there's more you guys want to add on this subject, please use the comment section below. Our content on this channel varies. It's quite a variety sometimes, but if this seemed like something you would like and you're not already done so, please consider subscribing to our channel. We definitely appreciate the support, and hope that all you guys are staying safe out there. You're thinking about this stuff and you're doing what you can to provide the best life you can for yourself and your family. We'll see you next time. Papa out.